Where do I find it in this crazy old world? Need strategies, strategies for living radio. Your dose of radio rehab. Strategies for living radio. Every time I listen, Lauren and David share strategies for living, and it makes me aware. I got strategies for living, strategies for living radio. Your dose of radio rehab. Strategies for living radio. Your dose of radio rehab. Strategies for living radio.
Oh, you know we need them. Yeah, we need those strategies, don't we? Those strategies for living. So are you ready? You ready for your daily dose of radio rehab?
Once upon a time I was.
You're getting right into it today. Hey, folks, welcome. Welcome into another edition of Strategies for Living. I'm Dr. David McMillian. She is psychotherapist, LPC, Lauren McMillian. You know, it seems everybody's talking about AI today, and there's a lot of fear that AI is taking over, right?
Sure, that's around.
You know, with that going on, what does it really mean to be human? In other words, you mentioned story. How does our story matter?
We are people of the story.
We are people. Yes, we are. The Wall Street Journal recently reported that businesses are clamoring for storytellers, and I would even go beyond that and say all people are clamoring for storytelling. We love our stories,
right? It's what shapes our reality. It's what creates who we are and how we interact with the world and each other. So
our life strategist today is a guy by the name of Gavin McMahon.
I hear he's a good storyteller.
In fact, he's got a new book out. It's called Story Business. It's why stories rule the world and how they can reinvent your business. And I would, just kind of make the change there, how the stories can reinvent your entire life.
Yeah, absolutely.
This guy's quite a storyteller. On the front of the book, my undergraduate degree is in business. One of my heroes, Ken Blanchard, wrote a blip on the cover of the book saying, informing, inspiring, an absolute delight to read. And I agree with him. Yep. I agree with him 100%.
There you go.
So, Gavin McMahon, our life strategist today here on Strategies for Living. Thank you for joining us. And we appreciate our sponsors who make it all possible. The Robinson Film Center, Azalea Cleaners, Pintail Roofing, Learning RX, We Train Your Brain, The Balanced Life Wellness Center, Fertitas Delicatessen, home of the Muffy, SRT Sales Training, Uprising Addiction Center, and Mira Direct Primary Care. We're going to get into some stories today. Story Business, Gavin McMahon, our life strategist. Stay with us.
Tune in daily, find the light. Healthy mind and spirits bright. Strategies for living strong. Feel the vibe, it won't go wrong. Body moves and soul align. Catch the rhythm, feel the time. Radio rehab every day. Chase those clouds of gray away. Your daily dose of radio rehab. Lift you up when skies seem trapped. Mind and body, spirits free. Living life in harmony.
And welcome into Strategies for Living. Lauren McMillian, David McMillian. Let's welcome into the program now Gavin McMahon. He builds stuff. Once it was submarines and sports cars and steel plants, big complex systems built on logic and precise plans. But plans have a funny way of falling apart when people get involved. As Gavin tried to figure out why, one truth became clear: people don't move without a story. Business is more than just strategy and execution. It's persuasion and inspiration too. As CEO and co-founder of Fast Forward, he helps companies shape strategy, leadership, and culture through storytelling. And now he's written a book about it. Gavin McMahon, welcome to Strategies.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'll hold the book up to the radio here where everybody can see it. That's a story right there, isn't it?
It's a nice cover, isn't it?
It is a good cover.
Yeah.
As everyone can clearly see.
Yes, exactly. Everybody's straining, but they can see it through the radio. So, why stories rule the world, and
that's a bold statement.
Yeah. So let's start there.
Break that down for us.
Yeah, stories rule the world.
Yeah, I think it's true. I was actually chatting to someone the other day, and we were talking about invention and innovation and just things that have, changed their lives. And if you go back, imagine you're in a pub or a bar and you're having one of these conversations where you kind of try and decide what was the invention that completely changed the world. And you might say it was the light bulb, or it was electricity, or if you're, maybe it's your iPhone, or maybe you may go all the way back to the printing press or the wheel or the discovery of fire. And, you could make a valid argument for all of those things. But what is also true is if the inventor cannot get that idea out into the world, if they cannot tell a story about it, if they cannot tell or pass the idea to the next person, that goes nowhere. And so I think stories are a really powerful vehicle, and we just don't, especially for someone like myself who's brought up as an engineer and sees the world in very black and white, we don't really realize the power of exchanging ideas and telling stories to other people, and also the stories that we tell ourselves. And that's really why I do think stories can change the world.
Yeah. I've always loved history, Gavin, and I look at the word and it, what jumps out at me is his story. Now I guess today we've got to say her story too.
Thank you.
Who invented storytelling? Do we have any idea?
No, we don't. In researching the book, I tried to take a look at that, and it's lost in prehistory. I mean, certainly what we do know we know a few things to be true. We know that before we invented writing, the only way we could pass information on was orally, and that's where you get oral history from. And what it was used for is to basically, tell people what's good, what's bad, what to do, what not to do, where the hunting grounds are, eat this kind of plant, don't eat that kind of plant. That's how language developed, and language and tool use developed at the same time. And we basically used the way our brains are wired. We can remember things much better when they're in the form of a story. So, in prehistory, when the first storyteller came around, whoever that was, or maybe it was a series of people, they were really passing on this kind of knowledge, and they were the holders and keepers of knowledge before we had books, before we had anything else. And that's how humans transmitted stories. We do know that. We just don't know who, and we don't know when. We just know it's tens of thousands of years old.
Yeah. And stories, again, businesses can be made or broken. Even great businesses that fail to tell the story, even though there's a good service or a great product, the story is what drives people, right?
Yeah, I think about that in a couple of different ways. First of all, I think any business is the sum of the decisions it makes. So if you're at Disney and you're making a bunch of decisions about whether to open a new theme park or whether to open a new ride. People are making decisions, and to make decisions, they have to tell each other stories. So there's a lot of storytelling on the inside of the organization and the business, and there's a lot of storytelling on the outside as well, getting people to come to that theme park, getting people to come to that new attraction, that new thing. So it's not just the businesses that, like Disney, that tell stories for a living. It's also, Harley Davidson tells stories, Apple tells stories, any kind of business, anything that's selling stuff is telling stories, because they're making decisions on the inside and they're talking to people on the outside.
Yeah, and also also people once they hear the stories, and I'm thinking Disney and Apple specifically, then people tell stories about the stories.
Completely, yeah. It's word of mouth is the most powerful marketing vehicle. Still, it always has been, and everything else we do in marketing is always to try and drive word of mouth, really. So that is that word of mouth that's there. But one other thing I'd say about storytelling, it's also, and this counts for humans as well, individuals, companies tell themselves stories about who they are. And Kodak famously thought of itself as a film company and invented digital photography, so it didn't make sense for who they were, and that's where they had that Kodak moment and didn't really take advantage of digital cameras and all the things that we have today. So the stories that we tell are hugely important.
Is there a golden age? Are we in the golden age of stories, or have we lived through the golden age of stories? Has there been a story boom, Gavin?
I've never been asked that question before. My gut answer is we're definitely not in a golden age. I think, but here's my second answer though. I think there's always a golden age to something, a golden age to cinema, a golden age to theater, a golden age to certain sports. It's always in the past. It's always looking back on certain things and eras where there was a boom. So yeah, you could probably say there is, and maybe people in the future will look back at today and look at the advent of AI and look at all the creation that's going on, either with AI or without AI, and say, yeah, this was a golden age. I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. I do know one thing to be true. There's certainly a lot more stuff out there and a lot more messaging and storytelling and a lot more fracture of the way we tell stories than ever before.
Yeah. Some people, and I'm not buying into this, but some people say, I can't tell stories. I like to read stories. I like to consume stories, but I'm not creative. I can't do stories. I can't create stories. What do you say to those people?
I think if they believe that to be true, that is true.
That's a story they're telling themselves then, right?
Yeah, I think the truth is the story people tell themselves. And if you tell yourself you're not creative, if you tell yourself you can't do certain things, you will definitely live up to that story. I think that happens all the time. That line, that the truth is the story you tell yourself, it explains a lot of things. It explains politics and why we either agree or disagree. It explains why change is really difficult. It explains why companies have a strategy that looks great, but they can't do it. It's all about the individual and what is going on in their head. So I know that's not exactly the question you asked, but I do think the truth is the story you tell yourself.
Yeah.
And people can't, but if people believe they can get better, they absolutely can get better. Yeah,
it kind of reminds me of the quote from Henry Ford, right? If a person thinks he can or a person thinks he can't, he's right. How did you get how did you get hooked into this? What hooked you on diving into stories and researching storytelling?
Well, for the past 25 years, I started out, as you said, as an engineer. But for the past 25 years, I've been working Fast Forward is a company that basically helps big companies with change. And so we're all about how do we move people from A to B. B hopefully is a better place. B is the new strategy. B is the vision of where the company wants to go. And a lot of that for us is about leadership and storytelling. Leadership is inspiring people to want to get there, and storytelling is about showing people a path of how they get there. So we think leadership is about making choices, and storytelling is how you amplify those choices.
Yeah. And I think that's certainly true corporately and company-wide, but it's also true individually. And again, I think the Henry Ford quote kind of underscores that. So stories are phenomenally important. And this is a phenomenally good book, folks. Whether you have a company and you want to help your business,
Or a company of yourself.
or we're talking about you, Lauren Inc., right?
That's right.
Or David Inc., or Gavin Inc. We've all got a story business, and that's the name of the book. You can find it at your favorite bookseller. It's Gavin McMahon and Story Business, Why Stories Rule the World, and how they can reinvent your business. We've got much more to learn from Gavin McMahon, our life strategist today, right here on Strategies for Living. Stay with us.
Facing the same old problems day to day makes you wanna holler, get away. Looking for the road that'll get me there, looking for hope and peace to spare. Looking for strategies. Strategies for living radio. Your dose of radio rehab strategies.
And welcome back in to Strategies for Living. Lauren Leon McMillian, David McMillan, Gavin McMahon is our life strategist today. He's got a great book out. It's called Story Business. It's Why Stories Rule the World and how they can reinvent your business. But I would also say how you can reinvent yourself through story. Gavin, once I dove into the book, there were some surprises to me. I got to chapter 4, and I'm not a great math fella, never have been. Tried to run from it more than, and that I know as an engineer type, that's not a story you're used to. But I get
I'm the same. I got out of engineering as soon as I could. Math was always a pain.
Well, and then I see the mathematics of story. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive in there. What are the mathematics of story?
Well, I think it was inspired. I think one of the lines I used that's related to that was the mathematics of the intangible, which I just thought sounded great. I don't know what it meant, and it was actually my daughter wrote that in a 10th grade or 11th grade paper that she had to do for school, and she was writing about storytelling, and she had that line, and I always remembered it because I thought it was great. I didn't really know what it meant, but it was me trying to figure out. I thought, well, I'm going to use that, and it ended up me trying to figure out what is this definition. If I'm writing about storytelling, how do I put a definition around it? How do I put some rules around it? Because I want people to be able to understand it. And obviously, I'm writing a book about storytelling in business, although I do think it's applicable to all sorts of walks of life. I've had politicians and lawyers and all sorts of people come to me and talk about the book and how it's been useful for them. But I had to define storytelling, and it's definitely not a book that will help you write the great American novel, and it's not something for writing a Hollywood screenplay. It's not that kind of storytelling. So for me, the mathematics were about the definition of story and the definition of telling. And the definition of story boiled down to a piece of information wrapped in emotion.
Mm.
And telling was framing the way people see the world and moving them to action.
So my story has heroes and villains, I hope.
Yeah.
Has a spine, is simple, evocative and provocative, has vivid words and actions, and frames how you see the world. Have I got the rules?
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. You're spot on. I think the heroes and villains is a big one that people get wrong. A lot of people, I mean, everyone, I think this, you will know this because you're in that field. And when you think about strategies for living, everyone's kind of the hero of their own story. You probably say that or versions of that in your own work.
Absolutely.
But everyone, I think, is the hero of their own story. And they find it very hard then to tell stories that can package their ideas to other people, because you have to make the person you're talking to the hero of the story. You at best can be the guide. And that's one of the rules that I think is the primary one, but it's also where it's very difficult for people to get there. They can understand it, but to do it is difficult.
Well, and that sounds to me that's kind of a way that storytelling can actually help us to build empathy then. Yeah,
I think it in a lot of ways it is. I don't know if you. I came across this. You probably know more about it than me, but there have been quite a few studies about narcissism and tracking studies about that. So what I read, which I think I'm not sure if this is 100% true, but basically that they have a narcissistic personality index, some kind of scale for how narcissistic are people. And over the last 30 to 40 years, the general population has got more and more narcissistic, which sounds true to me. I don't know if that is true, but it sounds believable. I believe that story. And when you think about, people on Facebook, in selfies, all those kind of things, that sounds true. But it also jibes with the idea that we are the hero of our own story. And when you said, Lauren, empathy, if all we're doing is we're reflecting ourselves, and if all we're doing is we're talking about ourselves, it's going to get very hard to get to that point of empathy, and it gets very hard to tell stories. And you have to almost flip it and think about who the real hero is, and that's the person you're speaking to.
Yeah. You mentioned social media and Facebook and Instagram, and I'm thinking we live in this world, this kind of new world of short attention spans.
Yeah.
How has that changed storytelling, or maybe the need for storytelling?
Or how is it changing storytelling?
I think the format changes, but I think the fundamentals don't really change. So I looked. You said you liked history. I went back and I looked at some of the great writers, and there's Ernest Hemingway comes up a lot in anyone's lists.
Absolutely.
And he has this theory of writing, the iceberg theory, which is basically, the words on the page are the top of the iceberg, but all the rest that's underneath that you can't see is the reader's imagination. And I think storytelling works like that. You can only put so many words on a page. You can only put so much in a meme. And when you talk about social media, it's just the top of the iceberg is shrinking. The imagination and what people are doing is still there. And also that's why people like stories so much, because they're filling in. They're doing so much of the work of imagining what it's like. We're at the beginning of this segment when we talked about the book and said it doesn't look like a great book. Half the people that were listening were imagining what a book cover would look like. They were filling that.
Absolutely. Right. That's one of the great things that I've always loved about radio.
Theater of the mind.
Yeah, exactly. And not that we're not all, that TV's not great too, but TV doesn't really, the imagination isn't flipped on.
Engaged,
as engaged, because the picture's there playing out, whereas in radio, the story and the imagination and the mind are all hooked in and involved, whether you're listening to an interview like this or you're hearing your favorite country song,
Yeah, you're a lot less passive. I mean, again, I don't have the science behind this, but it's not surprising then that, when Orson Welles does the War of the Worlds on radio, what was it, back in the 1930s? I can't remember, but there was a panic about that because it just sounded so real, and the imagination is a powerful thing, so it moves people in many ways.
Are the answers more important, or are the questions more important as we get into composing stories?
That is a good question. I'm on team question, I think, not team answer. Answers are nice, but I think questions ultimately are more powerful. Yeah. I think questions can disrupt the way people think a lot more than answers can.
Yeah.
People can discount answers, but finding a good question is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, I don't know, Gavin, if you're familiar with Louisiana, but we live in Louisiana. And so one of the college classes that I took as an elective was Louisiana history. Mm-hmm. And the guy walked in and he had a disheveled beard and overgrown fingernails, but he never brought in a note. He never referred to a note. But he sat there, he stood there in front of the class, and he told such rich stories. And I don't know about the rest of the class. It was a big class, but I was mesmerized. I was absolutely mesmerized by the story, and he hooked me. And thank goodness, because a lot of people that I looked around would get their tests back, and there'd be C's and D's, but I got A's. So,
and did he ask questions to tee up the stories, or did the stories tee up questions?
The stories, basically, he would tell the stories and they teed up questions in the students, and that's what he would encourage. Mm. He would tell the stories, and then part of the end of the class would be us engaging in questions and him, responding to those questions. So I think he used the story to engender the questions, but I'm like you. I'm on team question too.
For sure.
What about you, Lauren? Where are you?
Definitely team question. I think it leads us. It will continue to lead us. And I don't think there will ever be a firm answer.
No,
so.
But I think you've got to provide some answers, but you've got to strike a balance. I don't know what it is, Gavin. Maybe you do, but I'm thinking maybe 3-1. You ask 3 questions to give one answer. I don't know.
In that one answer,
I thought you didn't like math. No. Well, you went straight to a number.
You did, didn't you? You caught him.
Okay, busted. I don't know.
You're helping to change that story within him.
Yeah, I guess that's what he's trying to do. He's just working in the background there.
He's turned out to be a good life strategist.
There you go. Well, I tell you what.
But I read an interesting a piece of research, and it was about questions, and it may flip how people think about education, because it is stuck with me. I read this years ago, and the title of the research paper was, I think, "What's the capital of Brazil?" And actually they did a study around this question. And if you ask that question, what's the capital of Brazil? A lot of people, well, first of all, anyone listening will be thinking, do I know the answer to that question? You'll be thinking, do I know the answer to that question? And if you ask that in a live audience, a lot of people will be kind of on edge, because they either do want to be asked because they think they know, or they don't want to be asked because they're not sure they know. And to get people off the hook on this, the answer to that question is Brasilia. But a lot of people will say Sao Paulo or Rio de Janeiro or anything else.
Yeah.
What's interesting...
We got to take a quick break
here.
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah, but that's okay. Folks, you got to get this book, Story Business, at your favorite bookseller. Gavin McMahon. We'll be back. We've got much more to cover today with life strategist Gavin McMahon here on Strategies for Living. Be right back.
We all have problems every day. We all need help along the way. We need strategies Strategies for living radio.
Welcome back in. Yeah, we need strategies, but we need stories too. That's what we're talking about today. Lauren Leon McMillian, David McMillan. We're talking with Gavin McMahon. He's got a great book out. It's called Story Business, and it's why stories rule the world and how they can reinvent your business at your favorite bookseller.
Okay, so Gavin, we were right in the middle of you explaining the research on questions and how it might change the way we look at education.
Yeah, the question was about what's the capital of Brazil. Most people get the answer wrong. The answer is Brasilia. But what the research found is that actually when you ask a question and you don't do the course in geography beforehand, you just ask the question, and you put people on the spot to try and guess the answer. People are able to, once they're given the answer, that they're able to remember that much more powerfully or much more permanently, I guess, than if they learned it and took a test, which, if you think about it, is the exact opposite of the way we do education today. You'll kind of drill on what are kind of world capitals or something, and then you'll take a test at the end of term. Well, this is saying it should be the other way around. Just ask a bunch of questions. Yeah. People will remember the answers.
It sounds very Socratic.
I mean, so it goes back tens of thousands of years, and we've just forgotten it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sitting here listening and kind of contemplating and thinking about all the different areas in the book. And folks, the book is packed. The book is packed full. And I love that each chapter is broken up in just a handful of pages. So I love that.
But it has a nice flow to the layout.
Yeah,
it's very
it does. It does. But I'm sitting here listening to our conversation here and thinking, well, culture isn't a culture, which is extremely important in terms of how we develop and how we grow, the culture that we're born into. But isn't that just stories? Isn't a culture just a group of stories?
I mean, if you want my answer, the answer is yes. Culture is repeated law.
Yeah.
It's the stories we tell. There's a tremendously powerful role that gossip plays in society, which is you gossip around things at the edges of the norm. So whatever you define as the norm, you talk about people who are kind of betraying the norm or at the edges. So if, so-and-so is having an affair with so-and-so, and that's outside the norm, you would be talking about that. That would be the subject of gossip. That would be the scarlet letter. And, if you think of it, that by the way, that happens with, companies. It happens with, if you're a member of a community, if you're a group of friends, you've got these stories going on all the time, and people are telling each other these stories. And a lot of it is around keeping people within a set of boundaries that is the norm, that is the behavior that you expect. So culture, in a lot of ways, are the stories we tell each other about how we want to behave or how we should behave in an organization, in a group, in a community. And paying attention to that, especially if you're leading some kind of organization or you want to shape that culture, paying attention to the stories people tell and therefore how it drives their behavior is one of the most powerful tools you have to be able to shape the culture you're in.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If somebody is listening to us and says, yeah, Gavin is making a lot of sense, and you are. but okay, so I'm listening to this and I'm saying to myself, okay, I need to be more intentional about story and the story I'm living, maybe the story of my business, the story of my brand. Where do we start? Where's the beginning place to get more intentional about story?
Well, I like that you use the word intentional, because I think a lot of people relegate storytelling to the marketing piece of their brand or their business. And I think if you start there, you're starting in the wrong place, because what you're doing then is you're building a veneer over what really happens. And I think the best businesses are able to understand the the world they live in, that they're part of, how they play a part in that world, and they are able to tell stories all the way through from how they create value in that world to how they build products in that world to how they build a brand, how they sell. It all gets connected. And if you disconnect all these things, then you are inauthentic and you're not being very intentional. So I think it really starts at what's the purpose of the business. And if anyone's thinking about starting a business today, you want to be thinking about the fact that any business, even a huge business like an Amazon or an Apple, cannot bend the narratives that are out there. They can bend the narratives that are out there, but they cannot really create them out of whole cloth. Yeah. So if you look, you mentioned AI. We talked about AI a little bit off air. AI is a really good example. There are stories around AI that are companies are taking advantage of because one of the stories of AI is it's a gold rush. So NVIDIA, which is one of the biggest companies in the world, I think, right, as we're taping, it is the biggest company in the world.
Yes.
It takes advantage of that story, the gold rush, because the story that everyone knows, the pattern that everyone knows about a gold rush is the people that make money in a gold rush are the people that sell the picks and shovels. Who sells picks and shovels in the AI gold rush? It's NVIDIA.
Yeah.
So you want to be able to take advantage of those stories. And just paying attention to the words that people use. Think about, again, AI again. It gets described as a tsunami or a big bang or a revolution. Those are all scary words.
Yeah.
Or you might describe it as a black box or a genie out of the bottle. They're all mystical words. Or you might describe it as a gold rush or an arms race. They're all like fast. We've got to move fast type words. And so that how things get positioned and packaged are going to just impact the audience. Do you want someone scared of something that they don't know about, but they know they have to move fast? Because that's the way we're talking about AI right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So maybe we need to retell the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it depends where you take it. If you're NVIDIA, you don't want to change the gold rush story.
Right.
Good
well,
point.
I think it's important for us as consumers to be aware of those stories and to be able to monitor what we're then, allowing.
What stories are we taking in? Yeah.
What are we telling
What
ourselves?
stories am I buying into?
Yeah.
Because we don't have much time here, but I'm thinking, Gavin, you need to come back because we need about 5 more hours on this subject. But I'm thinking,
I'd be happy to.
I'm thinking religion and the importance of spirituality and religions. And, when you think about
that goes
it,
all the way back to myth, right?
Yeah, myth and parable and stories.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter what tradition you're talking about. That it's really driven
story
on the story. Fascinating
100%.
stuff. You got to get this book, folks. It's called Story Business. It's why stories rule the world and how they can reinvent your business. Gavin McMahon, our life strategist today. I wish we had more time, but you can continue the conversation by getting your copy of Story Business, and I hope you'll do that. We'll be right back to wrap up with Gavin McMahon here on Strategies for Living. Welcome back into Strategies for Living. There are life strategists that all of our life strategists are good, but there are some life strategists that you wish you could keep around and have about a 5-hour conversation with. And
that's true.
Gavin McMahon is one of them. His book is Story Business. You can find it at your favorite bookseller. So given the lack of time that we've got, Gavin, in about a minute, what do you really want people to take away from this conversation today and from Story Business?
I think I would ask that people start to pay attention to what they pay attention to, and then ask the question about why they pay attention to that particular thing, why moves them one way or the other. Because if you start doing that, you're really beginning to understand that we live in a world full of stories, and they are moving us all the time, whether we realize it or not. And I think if people can pay attention to that, they can understand how they're being moved, but they can also understand how they can move other people with their stories.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, Gavin, thank you for this work, and I do hope that we can have you back. This is good stuff. So thank you for the book, and thank you for being a great life strategist.
Oh, thank you for having me on the show. Thank you both.
The book is Story Business, Gavin McMahon. You can find it at your favorite bookseller, and I hope you will. Folks, thank you. Thank you for tuning in to Strategies for a Living. We appreciate you, and we especially appreciate our sponsors who make all of this possible. The Robinson Film Center, and Azalea Cleaners, and Pintail Roofing, and Learning RX. We train your brain. The Balanced Life Wellness Center, Fertitta's Delicatessen, home of the Muffy, SRT Sales Training, Uprising Addiction Center, and Mira Direct Primary Care. If today were the last day of your life, and there was only one more phone call that you could make, who would you call? And what would you say? And why are you waiting? Make the call. For Gavin McMahon, for Lauren McMillian, I'm David McMillan. See you next time right here on Strategies for Living.